Okay, so we're going to be solving by square roots. Before we even start solving, the first thing you have to realize is that you're actually going to get two answers. And the reason being is because when you take the square root of something, really you get the positive and the negative version. So, for instance, if you do 3 squared, it's 9, but if you also do negative 3 squared, it's 9. So, positive and negative squared equals 9. So you have to make sure that you do plus or minus to get both answers every time. So when you go to solve these, you're going to solve them like any other equation. The goal is to get the x by itself. And then basically when the x is alone, you want to square root it to get rid of that exponent of a 2. So for instance, number 1, the x is alone. Now I can do the square root symbol. The square root symbol cancels with the little exponent, so I just get x. And then if this breaks down, you got to break it down. Square root of 17 does not break down, so this would just be plus or minus the square root of 17. And then this is where your two answers come in. Plus 17, root 17 minus root 17. So same thing for number 2. The x is alone already, so then I can square root it to get rid of that exponent. So I'm just left with x. And then this time, root 16 does break down, and root 16 is 4. And you would do plus or minus. So positive 4, negative 4. For number 3, if you notice the x is not alone yet, so first step is to get the x alone. So I have to get rid of this plus 8 by subtracting 8. So I have x squared equals 20. Now that I have that alone, I can square root. The square root gets rid of this exponent, so I'm just left with x. And then this is where you have to break down the 20. So in the video yesterday, however you broke it down, I'm going to use a factor tree just because that's how you broke down yesterday. So the factor tree says that I have plus or minus a pair of 2's on the outside and then a 5 on the inside. So my answer would be plus or minus 2 root 5. So this is why I said you have to be able to break down a root, because you can't give me the decimal. You have to break it down to 2 root 5. For number 4, I have to get the x alone, so I would add the 169 over. So I have x squared equals 169. So then now I can square root, and I get x equals, and then the square root of 169 is 13, so plus or minus 13. For number 5, I need to get this x squared alone. So first thing I got to do is move this positive 54. So I'm going to subtract 54. So negative 6x squared equals negative 54. Then divide this negative 6x over. So x squared equals 9. And then now I can square root it. And the square root of 9 is plus or minus 3. Sometimes they break down nice. Other times you have to break them down, which is a pain, but it happens. All right, number 6. Let's get x alone. So to get x alone, I would divide by 7. When I divide by 7, I get negative 3. Okay. Then you would square root it. At this stage, you guys don't know how to take the square root of a negative. So at this point, if you have to square root a negative, you're just going to say no solution for now. We get into imaginaries, but not at this point. So you don't want to take the square root of a negative. Number 7, you would subtract 7. So x squared equals 81. Square root it. So x equals plus or minus 9. Number 8, get x alone. So I would subtract 1. Divide by 7. X squared equals 4. Square root. So x equals plus or minus 2. And then the last one, subtract 3. So we get minus 88. Divide by 4. If you notice, x squared equals negative 22. So when we go to square root it, we're not dealing with square roots of negatives yet. So this would be no solution for now. We'll deal with it in another section. So that's it. Get x alone. The only thing is the last step once x is alone is that you have to square root it. And then you get plus or minus. And then you either have a perfect square or you have to break it down like you did yesterday in the square root lesson.